Alright, welcome back to the channel everyone. So today I'm going to be doing a beginner tutorial on Context API, which is for React, a state management tool that avoids passing down states from parent to child, which is also called prop drilling, which is kind of a messy way of delivering state down through. So say this home component is the parent. I've got a left panel and a right panel. You can see them here. These are the children. So say for example if I had a piece of state here called text color, so I would have to define it up here in the parent component. Let's just call it red, set it to red. So now if I wanted to pass the text color down to my two children components here, say the left, we want to pass it into the left panel, I'd have to pass it in like this, which is called prop drilling. Now this isn't bad every single time. Like if there's a component that has a local like a local state and it's only being passed from one parent to one child, like it's only being passed down one time and it's not gonna be needed in multiple different components, then it's fine to do that prop drilling. But with the context API, it just keeps it cleaner and easier to maintain, which is when you're building a large project, you want to know exactly what everything is doing, and you don't want components relying on props that they don't need. So say for example this left panel inside had another child, and then that child also needed text color, you would have to pass it down again to the next child, whereas left panel itself isn't even consuming the state, it's just being used to pass a state down from child to child. So that's what's called prop drilling, and we can avoid that by using context API. So let's just continue our example here. So we receive text color and let's make the left panel text color of the color that we set. Text color. So now obviously we're receiving our state. Now if we wanted to set state, we also have to pass the set state down. So let's do that real quick. So now in our left panel we have access to our setter and the actual value. Let's get rid of this just so I have more room. So let's say we had a button here. Say we had a change button color. We can just call this the set state function that we passed in, and we can set it back to black. So you can pass setters and values down through props, which is one way of doing it, but I'm going to bring the context API into it now, and I'll show you how to achieve the same thing without passing props down. And you can just you can access any piece of state or any method or any value from anywhere in the from any component in the application. So let's come over here, create a new file called style context. So on this file is where you're going to create your context and then the provider, so that you can wrap the provider around the root of your application, so that all the components inside of that root can then access any of the values that are inside state or that are inside this context. So let's create the context itself. So style context is equal to create context. Just give it a default value of an empty object. Now we're also going to create the provider. This component is what's going to allow us to wrap around whatever components are consuming the state. So just write children in there. So we're just going to return a provider. Style context.provider, and then inside you're just going to put children. Now whatever states and values we want to provide from this style context, we want to define them right here. So you'll do the same thing as importing use states, and you can also import use effects or use memos, however you like to do it. So let's say instead of creating our text color locally, we're going to create it inside this provider, inside this context. We'll initially set it to red. Now we have these defined. We have these defined in our provider. Now to allow the rest of the application to access them, we're going to create an object called values, and we're just going to put all of our values that we want to be accessible. We're going to place them inside of the values object, and then give the provider an argument of values. So values. So this is all we need to do to set up a context provider. You want to group so say any piece of state that we have in relation to styles, we'll group them up into here. And if you had another slice, so say you had a context for login information or user information, you create another context called user context or user data context or however. So we have one last step before we can use these values in any of our components. We need to wrap this provider around whatever children we want to be able to consume it. So we can come back to our main application here. Let me move this. So this is the root. This is the root of the React app. We're going to import the provider up here. So actually I wonder, so what did I call it? Style context provider. Style context provider, and then we're going to wrap our app with the provider. So now everything inside of our app has access to whatever this is providing, which is, if we come back up, it's these values. All right. So now we can access it from any component inside of the app. We can now access it. The one thing to remember with this is, say if I had another provider with user info, user data, and we also wrapped the user data provider around style and app. Style and app would have access to the user data provider, but not the other way around. Like the user data provider would not have access to the styles. So just one thing to keep in mind there. So let's come back to, so let's say instead of passing these states down manually, let's remove them. And let's import useContext. color, and it's equal to useContext, and then you pass in the name of the context. So for us it's style context. So now we can access the text color and the set text color. So let's remove it from our home, seeing as we don't need it anymore. So now our left panel, without passing any props, our left panel is now using the text color and set text color. We're also to set, you can just you can still set from anywhere in the app. It's the same as if it was defined locally. And let's create a couple more things. So const background color. Let's make the background color blue initially. So again, we define it inside our context. We grab the values, paste them into our values object, and then the provider is now providing all of this. We can access it from any component because we're wrapping it around our main app root. And let's come into right panel. Right panel doesn't have any props. So again, to grab it out of the context, we're going to write const open up an object equals useContext. We need to import useContext. And then the name of the context inside, so style context. Also need to import that. And then define the names of the values. So background color, background color, set background color. So let's give this right panel background. So style background color. We're going to make it equal to the background color from our useContext, and there you have it, it's blue. It's just to finish it off, we'll just create a button. Change color, and we'll just give it an on click, the same as if the state was defined locally. Set background color to back to white, and now we can click it and it's working. So that's the useContext. That's a very simple explanation of it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, but thanks very much for watching.